I pulled my mud-caked work boots off on the porch, exhausted from another 10-hour shift, pouring concrete and framing walls under the hot Midwestern sun. The July heat soaked through my shirt, and I could feel the grit of sawdust clinging to my arms. As I stepped into the blessed cool of the air-conditioned living room, I expected to hear the usual chaotic harmony of home. The TV blaring a kid's show, my daughter singing off-key, my son rummaging through the fridge. But that evening, the house was unsettlingly quiet. "Lisa?" I called out, setting my lunch cooler on the kitchen counter. The silence that answered heightened my anxiety. Usually, my wife would be starting dinner or nagging Ethan about his homework by this time. Our two kids, Ethan and little Olivia, should have been around too, making the kind of racket only siblings 3 years apart can muster. Frowning, I checked my phone. No messages from Lisa. A quick glance at the clock told me it was just past 6 p.m. She should have been home an hour ago from her part-time job at the real estate office. I wandered down the hall, loosening my sweat-stained collar. When I pushed open our bedroom door, something felt off. The covers on the bed were rumpled, half pulled off as if someone left in a hurry. And on the nightstand, where Lisa usually kept her things meticulously arranged, her wedding ring lay glinting in the soft lamplight. A prickle of unease shot through me. Lisa never took off her ring. She used to joke that after 12 years of marriage, it had practically fused to her finger. I picked up the ring, my calloused fingers suddenly unsteady. The metal felt cold against my palm. A dozen scenarios raced through my mind, none of them good. Why would she take it off? An image flashed uninvited. Lisa, pulling it off to do something she couldn't bear to be reminded, was betrayal. I shoved that thought away, telling myself not to jump to conclusions. Maybe she just forgot it while washing dishes, I reasoned, even as the logical part of my mind rejected that. She wouldn't forget. I tried calling her cell. It rang twice, then went to voicemail. With each passing second of that hollow ringing, my stomach sank further. I left a quick message. "Hey, it's Mark. You left your ring at home. Everything okay? Call me." My voice sounded calmer than I felt. Back in the kitchen, I opened the fridge on autopilot and grabbed a beer. The cold bottle sweated in my hand as I took a long swig. Something was wrong, but I couldn't put my finger on it yet. I checked outside. Our minivan was gone from the driveway. She hadn't mentioned going anywhere special tonight. Ethan's bike was gone too, likely at his friend's place. And Olivia was probably at her dance class. Wednesday evenings she had ballet. That explained the quiet. The kids were out. But Lisa should have been back by now, or at least let me know if plans changed. I paced the living room, the tension tying knots in my shoulders. My boot socks left faint footprints of construction dust on the hardwood floor Lisa had just mopped last weekend. I paused and rubbed at a spot with my toe, mind distractedly wandering through possibilities. 10 minutes later, headlights swept the front window. I exhaled in relief and moved to the door. But when I opened it, I realized those weren't the familiar beams of our minivan. A sleek silver sedan I didn't recognize pulled to a stop out front. Through the twilight, I recognized the driver stepping out, Adam Porter, our neighbor and one of my closest friends. We lived 2 houses apart on this quiet suburban street for almost a decade. He and his wife Kelly often had barbecues with us on weekends. Our kids went to the same school. Adam gave me a quick wave and a tight smile as he walked up the path. The smile didn't reach his eyes. "Hey, Mark," he called, voice strained. Immediately I knew something was off. Adam was an easygoing guy, always quick with a joke or a slap on the back. But now he looked like a man coming to deliver bad news, not the usual friendly drop-in. I stepped out onto the porch, barefoot, the wooden planks cool under my feet. "Adam, what's up? Everything okay? Where's Kelly?" He stopped at the bottom of my porch steps, shoving his hands in his pockets. In the dimming light, I could see sweat on his brow, even though the evening was finally cooling. His reaction set my nerves on edge. "Kelly's at home with the kids," he said quietly. "Mark, we need to talk." "It's about Lisa." The way he said my wife's name, careful, like it might break, made my mouth go dry. I felt the world tilt a fraction beneath me. I tightened my grip on the doorframe. "What about Lisa? Is she hurt?" I heard the fear in my own voice. No, he said quickly, then hesitated. Not exactly. Look, I wasn't sure if I should come, but you have a right to know. I saw something today. Adam glanced up and down the street, as if to make sure no one else could overhear. Maybe we should talk inside. My heart hammered against my ribs. If he had a tip about Lisa, something serious enough to show up unannounced at dusk, it couldn't be good. I gestured him in. Come on in. What did you see? Adam stepped past me into the living room. I shut the door behind him. I could smell the faint odor of sawdust on myself and something like anxiety in the air. He remained standing, fiddling with his car keys. I left work early today. On my way back, I swung by Mallory's Diner to pick up dinner for my crew. You know, that place off Route 9 we all like. When I pulled into the parking lot, I noticed a car that looked like Lisa's van parked around the side. I thought that was weird. Lisa usually doesn't go out that side of town, especially not during work hours, so he took a deep breath. I got curious and went in. I saw Lisa in a back booth. She wasn't alone. A cold chill crept over my skin despite the warm night. I didn't realize I was holding my breath until he paused. Who was she with? I asked, voice barely above a whisper. Adam's face was etched with discomfort. She was with someone, Mark. It was a man. They were on the same side of the booth, sitting real close. He looked down. I saw them kissing. The word hit me like a 2x4 to the chest. I felt the blood drain from my face. Kissing? I echoed dumbly. He nodded, eyes full of apologetic pain. I'm sorry. I didn't want to believe it either. At first I thought maybe it's a mistake, someone who looked like her, but I walked right by. It was Lisa.
And it wasn't just a peck on the cheek between friends. They were clearly more than friends. He swallowed hard. I realized my hand had tightened around the neck of the beer bottle, squeezing so hard I worried it might shatter. I set it down with forced care on the side table. Who was the guy? Did you see his face? I asked. My voice sounded far away, as if someone else were speaking. Adam hesitated again, and I sensed another blow coming. He brushed a hand through his sandy hair. Yeah, I recognized him, Mark. He finally met my eyes. It was Brandon Hale. For a second, the name didn't register through the fog of shock. Then it clicked. Brandon Hale. My wife's boss. The owner of Hale & Associates Real Estate, where Lisa worked as a receptionist and office assistant. The same well-groomed, smooth-talking Brandon who had slapped me on the back at the company Christmas party last year, joking that he couldn't run the office without Lisa keeping everything in line. Now the image of that charming smile turned sour in my mind. I blinked, trying to clear the red haze creeping into my vision. Her boss? Brandon? Are you sure? It sounded like a plea. I'm sure. Adam bit his lip. They were kind of hidden in the back corner, but I walked past twice, just to be positive. His arm was around her. They were laughing at something, then kissing again. My jaw clenched so hard it hurt. A strange roaring filled my ears. The comfortable familiarity of my living room, the worn couch, the kids' school photos on the wall, the faint scent of dinner's casserole dish in the sink, suddenly felt unreal. Like I'd stepped out of my life into someone else's nightmare. I wanted to deny it, to call Adam a liar, but the look on his face was genuine anguish for me. Adam had nothing to gain by making this up. He came here as a friend, maybe dreading this conversation, but caring enough to have it. I sank onto the arm of the couch, staring at the floor. How long? I asked quietly. How long have you known? Or was this the first time? He quickly shook his head. This was the first time I saw anything, I swear. I debated even telling you, man. But if it were me, I'd want to know. I thought about calling Kelly first, but then I realized you needed to hear it immediately. She doesn't know yet either. I came straight here after dropping off the food and making up some excuse to my crew. I appreciate it, I managed to say through numb lips. My mind was a jumble of thoughts, and none of them made sense. Lisa and her boss? It felt like a betrayal that belonged to someone else's life, not mine. We had our issues, sure. 12 years of marriage isn't always smooth, but I thought we were solid. We had 2 beautiful kids,
A home you were proud of? We were planning a trip to the Wisconsin Dells next month with Adam and Kelly's family, for God's sake. I realized Adam was talking again. Didn't confront them. I walked out before they even saw me. I figured it wasn't my place to make a scene and that if I did, it'd just explode things. Mark, I'm sorry. He looked at me, eyes heavy with sympathy and a flicker of anger on my behalf. In that moment, I knew what he was saying was true. My gut twisted. For a long moment, I couldn't speak. I felt like I'd been dropped from a height and hadn't hit the ground yet, just endlessly falling. My hand instinctively went to my pocket where I still had Lisa's ring. The band pressed hard into my palm. Finally, I forced myself to meet his gaze. "Thank you for telling me," I said slowly. The words felt mechanical, but I meant them. However devastating, I needed the truth more than a comforting lie. Adam exhaled, as if he'd been holding his breath too. "What are you gonna do?" he asked softly. I looked around my living room, at the family photos on the mantle, the four of us smiling at the Grand Canyon last summer, the kids' goofy grins on the first day of school, the framed wedding picture of me in a slightly oversized tux, and Lisa radiant. In white. My eyes burned. A minute ago, I had no idea my life was teetering on the edge of a cliff. Now it felt like it had already fallen over and shattered. I realized I hadn't answered Adam's question. What was I going to do? Every instinct in me wanted to jump in my truck, drive straight to wherever Lisa was now, and demand answers. Maybe knock out Brandon Hale's perfect teeth while I was at it. The thought of them together, of him touching her, made my fists clench. But another part of me, a surprisingly calm voice amid the storm, whispered, "Don't act rashly. Not yet. Think." I had seen enough bar fights and heard enough stories to know that if I blew up without a plan, I might just make things worse for myself. I had 2 kids to think about. If I did something stupid like confront them publicly or, God forbid, get violent, it could backfire. I could end up in jail for assault. Lisa could spin the situation against me, and I'd still be left with the wreckage of my marriage to sort out, only now with legal troubles on top. I took a slow breath. "I'm not sure yet," I finally said. My voice sounded steadier than I expected. "But I'm not going to confront her." "Not until I have a plan." Adam gave a cautious nod. "I get that. If there's anything you need, I'm here for you, man. He shook his head, anger creeping into his voice now that the initial shock had passed. "It's unthinkable. I never would have imagined Lisa doing something like this to you, or Brandon risking his own family. Heck, you know his wife, too. They've been married, 5 years?" "Yeah, 5 years," I muttered. Brandon's wife, Mary Ann, was someone I'd met at that same Christmas party. She was quiet, pretty, and expecting their first baby then. Had that little girl turned 4 already? My stomach churned at the collateral damage this would cause, beyond just my family. I set aside those thoughts for now. I had to focus on one agony at a time. "I need to think," I said, running a hand through my sweat-damp dark hair. "I need to find out for sure. As crazy as it sounds, I still want to see it with my own eyes or have concrete proof, because once I make a move, there's no going back." Adam reached out and squeezed my shoulder firmly. "I understand. If you want someone to talk to or just not be alone tonight, I'll be okay," I lied. The last thing I felt was okay, but I appreciated the offer. Right now I felt an odd numbness creeping in, like my mind was shielding itself from the full brunt of pain until I was ready to handle it. He hesitated, then pulled a piece of paper from his pocket. "I almost forgot. I wrote down the license plate of Brandon's car. I figured if you needed it." He handed me a scrap torn from a receipt with a number scrawled on it. It was indeed the plate of the silver Lexus I remembered seeing Brandon drive. I took it and stared at the numbers blankly for a second before folding it up. "Thanks," Adam managed a ghost of a smile. "It's probably nothing you couldn't guess, but I thought, well, evidence is evidence." We both fell into an uncomfortable silence. Finally, Adam cleared his throat. "All right, I should probably head back home. Kelly will wonder what's up if I'm gone too long. Do you want me to keep this between us for now? I realized what he was asking. Kelly and Lisa were friends. If Kelly knew, word might get out quickly, even inadvertently. We lived in a town where news traveled fast through the grapevine. Yes, please, I said quickly. I don't want anyone to know until I figure out what's next. Not Kelly, not anyone. I trusted Kelly, but I also knew that if she confronted Lisa or even gave her a look of betrayal, Lisa might catch on that I knew something. Right now, the element of surprise was all I had. Of course, Adam agreed. I'll keep my mouth shut. But Mark, just remember, you're not alone in this. You got friends who care about you. Whatever you decide, I have your back. Okay? A lump rose in my throat. I stood and gave him a quick, grateful handshake that turned into a one-armed hug. Thanks. That means a lot. He patted my back and then pulled away, his own eyes a little shiny. Take care of yourself, all right? And your kids. This is going to be rough, but you'll get through it. I nodded, not trusting my voice right then. I walked him to the door, and he left with a last sympathetic glance. As the rumble of his car engine faded down the street, I closed the door and stood in the darkened foyer. The quiet of the house pressed in on me. My whole world had shifted off its axis in the span of a 20-minute conversation. In the stillness, the emotions I'd been holding at bay surged up all at once. Shock, hurt, rage, confusion. I wanted to scream, cry, break something, maybe all three. But I did none of those things. Not yet. I forced myself to take several deep breaths. My hands were trembling. I realized I still clutched Lisa's wedding ring in one fist, the edge digging into my skin. I looked at that simple band of gold and felt a wave of nausea. I tossed it onto the coffee table like it burned me. Then I sank onto the couch, head in my hands, as the first tear slipped down my cheek. Chapter 2. A Facade of Normalcy. I don't know how long I sat there in the dim living room, head in my hands. It could have been minutes or an hour. My mind was a tangled mess of betrayal and heartbreak, but through it all, a steely resolve was slowly hardening. I would not let my emotions destroy me or drive me to some reckless outburst. I needed to stay in control. At some point, I realized the sun had fully set, and the only light came from the kitchen range hood I'd left on. I wiped my face with the back of my hand, collecting myself. That's when I heard the familiar hum of our minivan pulling into the driveway. My heart thudded. I hurriedly grabbed a random magazine from the coffee table and sat back on the couch trying to appear casual, as if I'd just been reading in the low light and not having my entire world collapse. The front door opened, and my wife walked in with our daughter Olivia clinging to her hand. The sight of Lisa in the doorway under the warm foyer light was jarring. She looked so normal. Like the same woman I kissed goodbye this morning. Shoulder-length chestnut hair, a bit tousled, her work blouse slightly wrinkled, a tired but gentle smile on her face as she said something to make Olivia giggle. How many times had I seen that exact image and felt my heart swell with love for my family? Now, it took everything in me not to glare, not to scream at her for daring to smile as if nothing were wrong. "Daddy!" Olivia squealed when she spotted me. She let go of her mom's hand and scampered over, her little ballet flats tapping on the hardwood. I managed to smile and scooped my 8-year-old up into a hug, my arms probably a bit too tight around her small frame, but feeling her warmth grounded me. I had to hold it together, for her and for Ethan. I kissed Olivia's forehead.
"Hey there, Liv. You have fun in dance class?"
My voice sounded almost normal, I think. She launched into an excited ramble about a new routine they learned, complete with an attempt at a pirouette as soon as I set her down. I forced myself to pay attention and nod along, even as I was keenly aware of Lisa walking further in and setting her purse on the kitchen counter. "It's late," I remarked, once Olivia paused for breath. I kept my tone conversational. I was starting to worry. Lisa brushed a loose strand of hair behind her ear and gave a weary sigh. "I'm sorry. Today was a mess." She walked over and kissed the top of Olivia's head, then looked at me. "I had to work late unexpectedly." One of the partners sprung a last-minute meeting on us. Then afterward, I got a call from Megan. You remember my old college roommate? She was having a bit of a crisis and needed to talk. so I met up with her for a quick coffee. I should have called. That's my fault, she offered an apologetic half smile. I ended up asking Kelly to pick Liv from dance and keep her until I could swing by. She was happy to, said the girls played dress up for a while. Sorry if I scared you by not checking in. As I listened to that well-crafted explanation, I felt a strange calm come over me. Not because her excuse was convincing, parts of it were plausible to an unknowing ear, but I knew exactly which parts were pure fiction. No, the calm came because her lie confirmed something in me. She was choosing to lie to my face, smoothly and effortlessly, about where she had been, about who she had been with. It was the final proof that what Adam told me was true. She was living a double life at this very moment, even as she stood in our kitchen acting like a normal mom and wife. I realized a beat too late that I hadn't responded. It's okay, I managed quietly. I'm just glad you two were home safe. Lisa came closer and reached out to rub my shoulder affectionately. I had to lock my muscles to keep from flinching away. She still smells like him. An irrational thought flashed through my mind as her familiar lavender perfume hit my nose. Does she smell like his cologne? I didn't notice anything obvious, but just the suspicion made my stomach turn. You look beat, Mark, she said softly, gazing at me with what looked like genuine concern. Long day? You're covered in dust, hun. She brushed at a smudge on my sleeve. Normally that gentle fussing would make me smile, but now it took all my willpower not to recoil. Her hands on me felt wrong. I swallowed the resentment. Yeah, poured a foundation today in that heat, I said, mustering a weary tone. Couldn't be more drained. That at least wasn't a lie. Physical exhaustion was layered on top of emotional turmoil. Why don't you get cleaned up? I can heat up some dinner for you, Lisa offered. I made tuna casserole earlier. The kids and I ate before Olivia's class, but there's plenty left. I hesitated. The idea of eating anything right now made me nauseous, but refusing food when I'd been at work all day might seem odd. Sure, that sounds good, I said, forcing a slight smile. Thanks. I gently patted Olivia. Go on up and change out of your leotard, kiddo. It's almost your bedtime. Olivia pouted for a second, but a single raised eyebrow from her mother sent her scampering up the stairs. For all her spunk, she knew not to push bedtime too far. As soon as our daughter was out of sight, an awkward silence fell between me and Lisa. I realized this was usually the time we'd share a brief kiss or an update about our days. Instead, I moved toward the kitchen to busy myself, pulling a plate down from the cupboard. Lisa hovered near the sink. Where's Ethan? Still at Ryan's house? She asked, referring to our 12-year-old son's best friend. Yeah, I replied, glad that latch onto a mundane subject. He texted me asking to sleep over there tonight. Apparently some new video game came out and they wanted a marathon. I said, okay. His homework's done, as far as I know. My words came out normal enough, I think. Inside, I was remembering that Ethan was indeed supposed to be home by dinner, but he'd texted around 5, asking to stay over. I recalled Lisa had actually been the one to mention that plan to me in a text earlier in the afternoon, no doubt to ensure one less child underfoot during her illicit rendezvous. At the time, I hadn't thought anything of it. All right. Lisa nodded, leaning against the counter. I caught her looking at me, her brow slightly furrowed. Perhaps she sensed some tension. I tried to keep my face neutral, concentrating on scooping casserole onto the plate. In the quiet kitchen, I could feel her eyes on my back. Say something casual, I told myself. Don't let it get weird. So, how's Megan doing? I asked lightly, referring to the supposed college friend in crisis. I kept my tone as even as possible, a small test to see how detailed a lie she'd weave. Lisa seemed relieved at my question, as if it meant I bought her story. She took the bait without missing a beat. Oh, you know Megan. She's always a little dramatic. She had a fight with her boyfriend and was convinced it meant the end of the world. I mostly just listened and helped her calm down. By the end of it, she realized it wasn't such a big deal. Lisa rolled her eyes good-naturedly. Honestly, I hadn't seen her in months, so it was kind of nice to catch up, despite the circumstances. But it did throw my evening off. She gave a rueful chuckle. Anyway, I'm sorry I didn't communicate better. It was irresponsible. I hope you weren't too worried. She walked over and put a hand on my arm, giving it a light squeeze. I turned and looked at her, finally forcing myself to really meet her gaze. Those green eyes, the eyes I used to lose myself in, looked clear and earnest. A concerned wife who hoped her husband wasn't upset with her. She was an incredible liar. I had to give her that. There wasn't a flicker of guilt or panic on her face. If I didn't know better, I would have accepted her explanation without a second thought and probably apologized for making her feel guilty. I realized my silence had stretched a second too long. I was worried. Yeah, I admitted truthfully, though she assumed I meant about her safety. Next time, just a quick text to let me know. All right? Absolutely, she said softly. Her hand slid down from my arm to entwine with mine. You're so good to us, Mark. I don't say it enough, but I really appreciate how much you do for me and the kids. Hearing her speak those words nearly made me physically ill. I felt a tremor of anger beneath my skin. How dare she thank me and play the grateful wife after what she did this afternoon? The urge to rip my hand from hers and demand how she could look me in the eye right now was almost overpowering. But I bit it back. I summoned every ounce of will and gave her hand a gentle squeeze in return. Family comes first, you know that, I replied quietly. She smiled then, a warm, loving smile that in years past would have made my day.
Seeing it now gave me an almost out-of-body sensation. Was that smile always a lie, I wondered? Or was she compartmentalizing so well that part of her still believed what she was saying? Before I could dwell on it, Lisa released my hand.
I'll warm up your dinner, she offered, reaching for the plate I'd prepared. Thanks. I let her busy herself at the microwave. I took the opportunity to slip away to the bathroom under the pretense of washing up for dinner. In truth, I needed a moment out of her presence before I cracked. I locked the door and turned on the faucet to muffle any betraying sounds, then braced both hands on the sink and hung my head. I took slow breaths and stared at my reflection in the mirror. My face looked back, pale, eyes haunted. I barely recognized myself. Pull it together, I whispered. Not yet. Don't let her know. Splashing cold water on my face, I forced my features into a mask of tired calm. I had to get through one evening. After that, I would begin taking action. The thought steadied me. This is the last night I'll live in ignorance. Now I know the truth, and tomorrow the plan begins. I dried off and returned to the kitchen. Lisa had set my plate at the table, the tuna casserole steaming. She sat across from the spot, sipping a cup of tea as if keeping me company. I sat and poked at the food. My appetite was non-existent, but I managed a few bites to keep up appearances. Tasted like cardboard to me.
Lisa made light small talk, something about a funny thing Olivia said earlier, an update on some neighbor's new puppy. I nodded, gave short answers. Mostly I was operating on autopilot. If she noticed my lack of enthusiasm, she likely chalked it up to my long workday. At one point, she told me about a house showing that went awry when an unexpected thunderstorm rolled in. I even chuckled at the right moment when she described clients getting drenched. Outwardly, aside from being a bit quiet, I think I played the part of the tired but appreciative husband just fine. Inside, beneath each moment of that ordinary domestic scene, a dark mantra pulsed in my head in time with my heartbeat. She was with him. She's lying to you. They kissed. God knows what else. Over and over, the bitterness rose, and I forced it back down with a swallow of water or a clench of my fork. By 9 p.m., Olivia was in bed after her good-night hugs, and I'd texted Ethan to behave at the sleepover and not stay up too late. Lisa and I retreated to our bedroom. Normally, we might watch a show together, or she'd read while I scanned the news on my phone. Tonight, I claimed an extra early morning tomorrow and said I needed to hit the sack right away. She seemed a little surprised. I'm not usually the first to bed, but didn't question it. Of course. You worked so hard today, she said sympathetically. She changed into her cotton pajama shorts and tank top. I kept my back turned while I changed into an old t-shirt and sweats, afraid that even seeing her undress might trigger my anger or heartbreak in some obvious way. When I turned around, she was already under the covers, lamp on, scrolling her phone with a lazy smile. Probably checking social media or messages from friends. Was she secretly messaging Brandon, even now? The thought made my chest tighten. I slid into bed on my side, careful to leave a natural space between us. Good night, I murmured. She set her phone aside and scooted closer, leaning over to kiss me gently on the cheek. Good night, Mark, she whispered. Love you. I closed my eyes, feigning drowsiness. Love you too, I lied softly. It was the last time I'd say those words to her and mean them, I realized.
In that moment, they were nothing but an empty reflex, a placeholder to maintain the illusion a little longer. She didn't know it, but that made her the only one in our bed who still believed in those words. She switched off her lamp and rolled over, soon settling into the slow, steady breathing of sleep. I lay on my back in the dark, eyes open, staring at the ceiling fan as it whirred quietly. My mind was racing despite the exhaustion in my bones. Beside me, Lisa slept peacefully as if she hadn't a care in the world. My wife, who earlier today had been in another man's arms. She was sleeping just a foot away, trusting and content. I felt a flash of rage so potent it startled me. My hands clenched into fists under the sheets. How easily she deceived me, came home to me, lay in our bed, like everything was fine. Did she feel any guilt at all? Or was she telling herself some story to justify it? I had no answers, and I wouldn't get them by staring at her or confronting her now. All I knew was that nothing would ever be the same. In the silence of our bedroom, I made a silent vow. I would not be the naive, trusting husband she thought I was. I would be as calm and cold as I needed to be. If she could put on a facade, then so could I. In the morning, I would begin working out exactly how to protect myself and my children from the fallout that was coming. And not just protect myself. I would make sure Lisa and her lover paid dearly for the pain they were causing. I wouldn't lash out blindly. I would plan it out, brick by brick, like constructing a building meant to last. Beside me, Lisa murmured in her sleep and shifted, her hand brushing my arm lightly. I held my breath until she rolled away again. It was a long time before sleep finally came for me. And when it did, I swear I heard the faint grinding of the first foundation stones of revenge being laid in my mind. Chapter 3. Laying the Groundwork. Morning light filtered through the curtains as my alarm blared at 5:30 a.m., its shrill tone dragging me from a fitful doze. I slapped it off and lay still for a moment, disoriented. Then the memories of yesterday evening crashed back down. Instantly, my stomach clenched with dread and anger. For a second, I wished it were all a terrible dream. But Lisa's soft breathing beside me was a reminder that reality had indeed changed. She was still asleep, facing away. I carefully slipped out of bed, doing my best not to wake her. My body moved on autopilot through the motions of getting ready for work, shower, shave, jeans, and a clean company t-shirt. It was a relief to step under the hot water and let it scald my skin. It grounded me, gave me a moment to think. Game plan, I reminded myself. I had to act normal until I had everything in place. That meant going to work as usual, or at least making it seem like I did. Stepping out of the bathroom, toweling my hair dry, I saw Lisa stirring awake. She squinted at the clock. "Already?" she mumbled sleepily. "Morning," I replied, forcing a mild tone.
Yeah, I gotta head in early.
Pouring that parking lot today. I wasn't actually sure I'd go to the job site. My crew could handle a morning without me, and I had more urgent personal business. But I maintained the story for her benefit. She sat up, pushing her hair out of her face. Her eyes were puffy with sleep, but she smiled softly. "Drive safe. Love you." Those words again. I felt a flash of irritation, and how casually she could say them as if nothing had happened. I swallowed and gave a faint nod. "Love you too." It felt like a lie in my mouth now. Grabbing my work boots, I headed downstairs. I heard her moving, likely getting ready to wake Olivia for breakfast and get on with her day. She wasn't going into the office this morning. I remembered her mentioning last night that she had no showings until the afternoon, which meant she might spend the morning doing paperwork from home or running errands. I needed to act quickly before she could suspect anything. In the kitchen, I filled a thermos with coffee and scribbled a short note. "Took breakfast to go. See you this evening. Tash M." Just an ordinary departure. If I stayed home or lingered, she might wonder why. At 6:15, I pulled out of the driveway in my pickup, giving a casual wave to Lisa, who peeked through the blinds. I forced a smile for her benefit. As soon as I turned the corner out of our neighborhood, I let that facade drop, my face hardening with determination. I parked a few blocks away at a strip mall lot that was mostly empty at this hour. From there, I made 2 important phone calls. The first was to my foreman at work. "Hey, Dale," I said when he answered with a yawn. "It's Mark. Listen, I've got a personal emergency to deal with today. Think you can supervise the pour without me?" Dale was a solid guy, my right hand. "Sure thing, boss. Everything all right?" "It will be," I replied. "I'll fill you in later, but for now, just handle things and call me only if it's absolutely urgent. He promised he would. I trusted him. We'd worked together for years, and rarely had I taken off at short notice, so he knew it must be serious. The second call was to a law firm, whose number I pulled up from my phone contacts. It was the firm that handled the divorce of another friend last year. I remembered how that friend had praised his lawyer for securing a favorable outcome. At the time, I never imagined I'd need such services, but here I was. It was early, just past 6:30, so I left a voicemail. In a steady voice, I stated my name and that I needed to consult regarding a potential divorce. I requested an appointment as soon as possible, preferably today. My tone was clipped and businesslike. I didn't trust myself to say more to an answering machine without my voice preying emotion. To my surprise, a paralegal from the firm rang back within 15 minutes. She said one of their senior attorneys, Frank Whitaker, could see me at 10 a.m. I confirmed the time and got the address. With a few hours to kill, I decided to use them wisely. I grabbed breakfast from a drive-thru. Though I had little appetite, I forced down a few bites of a breakfast sandwich and more coffee. I needed to keep my energy up. Then, I parked in a quiet corner of a large grocery store lot, pulled out a notepad, and began making a list. It was something I often did for work projects. List out tasks, materials needed, and a timeline. Treat this like a job. A demolition and rebuild of a life, I thought grimly. At the top, I wrote objectives and bullet-pointed a few broad goals. Protect the kids. Protect my assets and financial security. Gather undeniable evidence of Lisa's affair. Expose Lisa and Brandon, I actually wrote his name with a stab of the pen, and hold them accountable. Ensure Lisa and Brandon face consequences, financially, socially. Listing it out gave me clarity. Under evidence, I scribbled possible methods. PI for photos, check phone or emails, track her movements, maybe a VAR in her car. Under assets, I listed things like separate bank account, secure important documents, deed titles, inventory valuables, monitor credit cards. As I wrote, my phone buzzed. It was Hext from Lisa. Hope everything's okay. Let me know if you'll be home for dinner or if you have to work late. XO. I stared at her message for a moment, then locked the phone without replying. I'd respond later with some generic answer. Right now, I couldn't stomach texting sweet nothings. By 9:30, I was sitting in the waiting area of Whitaker and Reed, attorneys at law. The office was in a downtown high-rise, all glass and chrome, making me feel self-conscious in my dusty work jeans and boots. But if the receptionist minded, she didn't show it. She offered coffee. I politely declined, already jittery from 2 cups, and assured me Mr. Whitaker would be out soon. A few minutes later, a silver-haired man in a crisp navy suit emerged. He gave me a firm handshake. Mr. Evans, I'm Frank Whitaker. Come on back. His office was spacious, with a wall of windows overlooking the city and shelves lined with thick legal tomes. I took a seat in a leather chair across from his mahogany desk, feeling a twist of anxiety in my gut. This made it all very real. So how can I help you today? He began once we were settled. He had a practiced, neutral expression, but his eyes were kind enough. Likely he had dealt with many heartbroken or angry clients before. I cleared my throat. I appreciate you seeing me on short notice. I'll get straight to the point. I believe my wife is having an affair. I intend to file for divorce, but I want to do this strategically. Protect myself and our kids and, well, ideally, ensure she and the other man face consequences for what they've done. It all tumbled out more bluntly than I'd planned, but Whitaker gave a slow, understanding nod. I'm sorry to hear that, he said. Infidelity is a difficult situation. Let's start with the basics. How long have you been married and do you have children? 12 years married, 2 children. My son Ethan is 12. My daughter Olivia is 8. I took a deep breath. We live here in Wisconsin. Our house is... Well, I'll get to assets in a moment, but yes, it's likely adultery. I only found out yesterday, and I'm still gathering proof. Whitaker picked up a pen and legal pad. Wisconsin is a no-fault divorce state, he said gently. That means that legally, you don't have to prove adultery to file for divorce. And generally, the court doesn't punish a spouse for infidelity in terms of dividing property or custody. However, evidence of an affair can sometimes indirectly influence things like spousal support or a judge's view of parental fitness, depending on circumstances. And it can certainly give you leverage in negotiations or settlement discussions, especially if the other party wants to avoid a messy public airing of the affair. Do you follow? I nodded. It was more or less what I expected. I knew enough from hearing about other divorces that the law wouldn't automatically strip a cheating spouse of everything. But leverage, yes, that's what I want. Now, he continued, let's talk assets and finances. What do you and your wife own jointly and what individually? Any significant wealth at play? Businesses, inheritances? I outlined our situation as calmly as I could. We own a home with some equity. The land was originally a gift from my family. I run a small construction contracting business. My wife works part-time, and I make roughly 3 times her salary. We have some savings and retirement funds, a couple of cars, and aside from the mortgage and a car loan, little debt. He scribbled notes, then asked, any inheritances or significant gifts specifically given to either of you separately during the marriage? Sometimes those can be claimed as individual property, if not commingled too much. My grandfather's inheritance was one. Also, the land our house is on was a gift from my parents before we built the house. The house itself was built after we were married, but the land's title is in my name only. Whitaker nodded. That could be significant. The land might be considered your separate property depending on how things go. We'll document that. But regardless, Wisconsin law would likely split marital property roughly 50-50 unless there's a compelling reason otherwise. Infidelity in itself usually isn't considered a compelling legal reason to deviate from that. But there are exceptions, like if marital funds were spent on the affair or if we negotiate something out of court. I tensed. If it comes to 50-50, then she could take half of what I've worked for despite being unfaithful. That doesn't sit right with me. I realized my voice was growing bitter. His expression remained professional. I understand how you feel. This is where strategy comes in. If we can prove she misused marital assets on the affair, for example, we can ask the court to credit that back to you. That's called dissipation of assets. Or if you can get her to agree to a settlement that's more favorable to you, that avoids the court deciding. And frankly, many cheating spouses might agree to less if they fear exposure or out of guilt. Especially if you negotiate before it gets ugly in court. That made sense. I leaned forward. I want to gather as much evidence as possible, not just for leverage, but because I need it for my own peace of mind and to confront her at the right time. Photos, messages, anything concrete. I'm prepared to hire a private investigator if necessary. Whitaker actually smiled slightly. You're coming at this with a level head, which is good. Many people storm in wanting to burn everything down immediately. You're thinking ahead. Yes, a private investigator could be very useful, particularly if the affair partner is meeting her regularly. You mentioned this is her boss? Yes, her boss. Married as well. 1 child. His name is Brandon Hale. He owns the real estate firm she works at. I have a witness, my neighbor, who saw them kissing at a diner yesterday, but I doubt that alone is enough. I plan to catch them in the act, or at least get undeniable proof on camera. The lawyer's eyebrows rose slightly. Her boss? Well, that complicates her life too. There could be workplace ramifications if that's discovered. Not directly relevant to divorce proceedings, but it adds to her potential desire to keep this quiet. Have you confronted her or the man yet? No, I said quickly. I'm pretending I don't know. I want them to feel safe, so they don't cover their tracks too well or call it off before I have proof. I figure I need to move quickly, though, before something tips them off. Agreed. All right, let's outline an approach. He clicked his pen. First, securing assets. You should, as soon as possible, open a separate bank account and move at least half of any joint cash into it. Half would typically be your share anyway, and it prevents a scenario where she might drain the accounts if she anticipates a divorce. Also consider temporarily freezing any home equity line or joint credit if you suspect she might try to rack up debt out of spite. We can file an injunction with the divorce to prevent dissipation of assets once we file, but that only kicks in after she's served. Until then, proactive moves help. I absorbed that. I can do that this week, yeah. I'll quietly transfer about $20K into my personal savings account, which she doesn't have access to. That account I already had from before marriage, though I've used it for some household things. It might be technically marital funds, but at least she can't withdraw from it online since it's only in my name. She probably won't notice immediately, if at all. She is not one to check balances often. Good. Next, gather financial records. Recent bank statements, credit card statements, tax returns. If there are any red flag charges like hotel bills or unusual withdrawals, note those. You mentioned the down payment and land gift. Find documentation of those if possible. We want evidence of anything that supports an unequal distribution in your favor, or at least the protection of that separate property. I nodded. I have the deed of the land in a file at home and the letter of gift from my parents and bank records of the inheritance deposit. I'll get those. Excellent. Now about your kids. He steepled his fingers. You said you want to protect. In terms of custody, is there any reason to think your wife would be a bad or unfit parent, aside from the affair? Has she neglected them or anything? Courts generally separate marital conduct from parenting unless the affair directly put the kids in danger or indicated poor parenting judgment. I clenched my jaw a moment thinking. She's been a good mom overall. I won't lie, she loves them. This affair doesn't change that fact. My concern is not that she'd abuse them or anything, but I do want primary custody. I can't imagine not having my kids with me. If she's the one who blew up the marriage, I feel like I should get to keep the lion's share of time with the kids. Especially since I've always been the one who coaches Ethan's baseball, helps with homework, etc. She's involved, but I'm more so. Due to her working less, I often adjust my hours to be with the kids in the evenings. He scribbled another note. That can be part of our argument, certainly. We can't guarantee. Many judges default to joint custody these days unless there's a clear reason not to. But if she's preoccupied with a new relationship, maybe she'll be amenable to giving you more time in exchange for something, or maybe she won't fight if she feels guilty. Hard to predict. For now, focus on being an attentive dad, which you already are by the sound of it. Keep a log, if possible, of what you do with the kids daily. Just something to have in your back pocket to show your involvement if needed. If things get contentious, any evidence that you are the more present parent can help. I nodded. That made sense. A parenting journal, or at least mental notes of how I handle their routines mostly. All right, Whitaker said. Now, about evidence of the affair. If you can get texts, emails, photos, anything showing the nature of their relationship, that will be useful leverage. You mentioned possibly hiring a PI. I know a couple of good ones. I can refer you, or you can choose your own. A referral would be appreciated, I replied. I'd rather someone who's proven themselves. I want them discreetly tailing her as soon as possible. I suspect she might meet him during lunch, or sometimes they have evening work events. For instance, she told me she has a work dinner next Friday. Now I wonder if that's really a cover to meet him. If so, that's an opportunity. He pulled out a business card and wrote on the back, "This is a reliable investigator we work with often. Name's Dan Porter. He's a former police detective. I wrote his direct line. Give him a call today. He can often start on short notice." I accepted the card gratefully and tucked it in my wallet. We spent the next 20 minutes going over a few more points. How filing would work once I was ready, likely timeline of divorce proceedings, and what immediate actions we'd take when I gave the green light, like a temporary restraining order to make some. Keep things status quo with finances and home once she's served. Whitaker advised me not to tip my hand to Lisa in the meantime. Standard advice. Don't confront her, don't move out of the house, don't let on that I'm even considering divorce. Act as normally as I can manage to keep her from lawyering up first or hiding money. As we wrapped up, he asked gently, "How are you holding up, Mr. Evans?" I know we've talked a lot of strategy, but I acknowledge this is also a painful personal matter. I must have looked tired or bleak because his tone had softened. I straightened a bit. I won't pretend I'm not a wreck inside, but focusing on the plan helps. I have to keep it together for my kids. And frankly, the idea of making them, the cheaters, pay for this in whatever way I can is the one thing keeping me from falling apart right now.
He offered a faint, sympathetic smile.
Revenge can be a powerful motivator, but remember to keep sight of the end game, a stable life for you and your children after this is over. I'll do everything I can to assist you in that. Now, my assistant will give you some pamphlets about the divorce process and our firm's fee structure. We'll open a case file. You don't have to decide on filing today. We can wait until you've got the evidence or whenever you're ready. In the meantime, start gathering those documents and information we discussed and call that PI immediately. I shook his hand firmly, appreciating his balance of pragmatism and empathy. Thank you, Mr. Whitaker. I'll be in touch very soon. Leaving his office, I felt a mix of heaviness and hope. The path ahead was daunting, but at least I had a roadmap now. Outside on the sidewalk, I dialed the investigator's number without delay. Dan Porter answered in a gruff, no-nonsense voice on the second ring. "Mr. Porter, my name is Mark Evans," I introduced myself. "Frank Whitaker recommended I call you." "I need surveillance on my wife, starting as soon as possible." My voice shook just a little, saying the words out loud to a stranger.
He got down to business immediately, asking me to come by his office that afternoon to provide details. My wife's description, routine, suspected meeting times with the affair partner, car make and model, and so on. He said he could start surveillance within 24 hours, possibly sooner, and that he understood urgency in these situations. We arranged to meet at 1 p.m. As I hung up, I realized it was nearly lunchtime. Lisa would likely be expecting a text or call from me at some point, so it wouldn't seem like I vanished. I quickly typed out a message. "All okay, had to deal with emergency job issue. Might be home a bit late. I'll grab something on the way. Don't wait on me for dinner." Her reply came shortly after. "All right, good luck. Hope it works out. See you tonight." The little heart she added at the end almost made me laugh, or maybe cry, with disbelief. I pocketed the phone and headed back to my truck. There was still a bit of time before I had to meet the PI. Rather than stewing idly, I drove to my bank. Following Whitaker's advice, I initiated a transfer of $20,000 from our joint savings into my personal savings account. That was roughly half of what we had jointly. The bank teller handled it without question. I also asked about temporarily lowering the credit limit on our joint card, claiming I was concerned about fraud after a recent data breach. They agreed to send us new cards and, in the interim, set a low daily spending alert. It was a subtle move. I doubted Lisa would attempt something drastic like maxing out a card, but I wasn't taking chances. I then swung by home, carefully timing it, knowing Lisa would be out at her office by now to do an afternoon showing. At home, I collected the important documents Whitaker wanted: the property deed, the inheritance letter, bank statements, and tax returns from our file cabinet. I also quickly installed a USB flash drive program on our home desktop computer that would automatically save copies of her email correspondence to a hidden folder I could access remotely. It was a crude form of snooping, but I knew she sometimes logged into her personal email or Facebook on that shared computer. Perhaps I'd get lucky and find incriminating messages later. I had to be cautious and quick in case she came back unexpectedly. Finally, I retrieved an old digital audio recorder I had from years ago, back when I had to record meetings for a big project. I tested it, put in fresh batteries. I planned to slip it under the driver's seat of her minivan that night. If she made phone calls to Brandon while driving, maybe I'd pick something up. It might be a long shot, but I was covering every angle I could think of. By 1 p.m., I was sitting across from Dan Porter in his small office above a strip mall. Porter was a stocky man in his 50s, with a salt and pepper beard. He listened without judgment as I laid out the basics of my situation. "I can start surveillance tomorrow," he said, taking notes. "I'll follow her from home, see if she meets this man. If you have any specific times you suspect, let me know." I mentioned the upcoming work dinner excuse next Friday and that Wednesdays might be lunch meetup since that's how she was caught yesterday. Also perhaps Monday mornings when she often went in late, claiming to run errands. He asked for recent photos of Lisa and Brandon. I provided one of Lisa from my phone. I had none of Brandon personally, but a quick search online turned up the real estate company's site with his professional headshot and profile. Porter said that was enough. We discussed his fee, and I paid a retainer. It was a hit to my savings, but if it got me what I needed, it was worth every penny. As I got up to leave, Porter offered a firm handshake and a final word. "I'll be discreet. If there's something to find, I'll find it, Mr. Evans." "You'll have photos or videos soon if they keep this up." "Thank you," I said quietly. "I appreciate it." Walking back to my truck, I felt the weight of what I was setting in motion. Things were accelerating. Part of me was anxious. What if, by some chance, they sensed something and went underground? But no, I had to trust the process. Lisa thought she was safe under the cover of my trust and ignorance. For now, the element of surprise was still mine. I spent the rest of the afternoon on a few errands to keep up appearances, even bought a new drill bit set from the hardware store to show, if asked, what I worked on. Then I headed to pick up Ethan from his friend's place on the way home, as we'd planned earlier.
Throughout all these motions, a cold determination kept building in me. Each step, lawyer, bank, PI, was a brick laid in the structure of my revenge. It was painstaking work, slower than the raging part of me wanted, but like any construction project, a strong foundation was key. And I was going to make damn sure that when I finally confronted Lisa and Brandon, the whole edifice of their affair would come crashing down on their heads, with no chance to escape unscathed.
Chapter 4. Beneath the Surface.
The next week passed in a tense blur of routine on the surface and covert operations underneath. By day, I went to work as usual, managed my crew, ate dinner with my family, helped with homework, and even chatted with neighbors. But every moment, I was preoccupied with the parallel track of gathering evidence and staying a step ahead. True to his word, Dan Porter began surveillance on Lisa the very next day. We communicated through a burner phone he provided. I carry it with me at all times, waiting for updates like a detective anxiously awaiting a break in a case. On Wednesday afternoon, just 2 days after my meeting with Porter, I got the text I had been anticipating and dreading. Subject met mail, 12:30 p.m. at Lakeside Inn, motel off Highway 16. We'll send photos later. My heart pounded as I read it while on a short break at the site. Lakeside Inn. I knew that place, a seedy motel on the outskirts of town by the highway. My vision swam for a moment with a mix of rage and pain. So it was real. Lisa had skipped out during her lunch hour to meet Brandon at a motel. It took every ounce of will not to hop in my truck and race there to catch them in person. But I forced myself to stick to the plan. Porter was doing his job. Storming in might ruin everything or even end in a physical altercation I might regret. That evening, Porter emailed me a set of photographs. I waited until I was alone, sitting in my truck in the darkened driveway after work, engine off, to open them on my phone. Even though I knew what to expect, the images made my hands shake with anger. Grainy but clear enough. My wife, stepping out of her blue minivan in the motel parking lot, glancing around nervously. Then another photo of Brandon, unmistakable in his dress shirt and slacks, meeting her by the door of a motel room. One of them entering the room together, another of them leaving about 45 minutes later. The last photo zoomed in to capture a goodbye kiss in the shadow of a stairwell before they parted. I had to set the phone aside and just breathe for a minute. Seeing it captured in pixels turned any lingering hope that this was a mistake into ash. The woman I saw in those photos was one I barely recognized. A sneaking, adulterous version of the devoted wife I thought I knew. That night at dinner, I could hardly look at Lisa. Every time I did, I saw the motel door closing behind her and Brandon. I busied myself with cutting my meatloaf, nodding along to Olivia's chatter about school. Lisa was mostly quiet too, absorbed in her own thoughts. Was she thinking of him? Planning their next tryst? Or feeling guilty, maybe? At one point I caught her studying me with a tentative expression. Everything okay? You've been pretty quiet the last couple days, she asked gently. I looked up, meeting her gaze with what I hope was a reassuring smile. Yeah, sorry, just a lot on my mind with work. Big project deadlines, you know how it is. She nodded slowly. You've seemed stressed. If there's anything I can do... She reached out and squeezed my hand on the table. I stiffened involuntarily before I could stop myself. Her touch now had an almost visceral effect. Part of me yearned for the comfort it used to bring. Another part recoiled at the thought of where those hands had been. Her brow creased at my subtle withdrawal. I quickly turned my hand over to hold hers, covering the misstep by giving a light squeeze back. I'm okay, really. Maybe I just need a good night's sleep. That night I lay awake longer than usual, mind replaying those photos on a loop. Anger flared white hot when I imagined their embraces, and I had to calm myself by thinking of the bigger picture. Soon, I told myself. Each piece of evidence was another nail in the coffin of her comfortable lies. Friday arrived, the day of the so-called work dinner. In the morning, Lisa mentioned it casually as we packed the kids' lunches. Don't forget I'll be home late tonight, she said, not quite meeting my eyes. The firm is having that client dinner, and Brandon wants me there to help schmooze the new investors. It might go past 9. I buttered my toast slowly, controlling my expression. Right, you mentioned. Sure you don't want me to keep a dinner plate for you. She smiled, a little too quickly. No, I'll probably eat at the event. You and the kids can order pizza or something fun. Have a movie night. Sounds like a plan, I smiled back. Inside, I felt a grim satisfaction. She was parroting the same lie she'd told earlier in the week to justify tonight, and she thought I was completely oblivious. Little did she know, by tonight, I would have everything I needed. I already arranged for Olivia to sleep over at her friend's house Friday night. The friend's mom thought it was a fun playdate idea. Ethan, being 12 and easygoing, was fine with a pizza and video game night at home supervised by good old Dad. These arrangements served two purposes. One, it was a nice treat for the kids, and two, it would keep them out of the crossfire if anything went down that night. In the afternoon, I got confirmation from Porter. Lisa had left for the dinner, dressed to the nines, and unsurprisingly never showed up at any fancy restaurant. Instead, she met Brandon at an upscale hotel downtown, the kind with a conference center and dining room where such an event could plausibly be, except they didn't join any dinner. They went straight to a room upstairs. Porter had gone all out. By evening, he sent not only photos, but also short video clips. One showed Lisa and Brandon checking in at the hotel desk together. He'd somehow gotten a vantage across the lobby. Another later clip, time-stamped 9:45 p.m., showed them exiting the hotel elevator on the ground floor looking disheveled. Lisa's hair was a bit messy, and Brandon had an arm around her waist briefly before they separated. They looked around cautiously, then he left through the lobby, while she lingered and eventually exited a side door. I watched these in my home office, on my laptop, door locked, while Ethan was engrossed in a movie downstairs. The evidence was damning and complete. My stomach churned, equal parts sickened and relieved. In addition to the PI's photos and video, I even discovered an email receipt showing she had bought him an expensive gift with our money. Each new piece of proof only fueled my anger and steeled my resolve. By late Friday night, after I put Ethan to bed, none the wiser, happily full of pizza and action movies, I sat alone in the living room with just the quiet hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. Lisa still wasn't home. She'd texted around 10:30 saying, "Heading home now, see you soon, kiss kiss." I knew from Porter she actually left the hotel at 9:45, so likely she had taken time to freshen up or just wanted to stagger her arrival to make her story consistent. Pretend the dinner ended later. I had a folder of printed evidence hidden in my office and digital backup saved on a thumb drive in my pocket. The weight of the knowledge pressed on me, but I also felt a sense of grim accomplishment. Stage one of my plan was complete. I had the proof, and I had secured my position financially as best I could without alerting her. And in the process, something had shifted in me. The heartbreak was still there, yes, deep and aching. But it was now firmly welded to anger and resolve. The initial shock and sadness had been hammered into a cold, sharp instrument of purpose. I no longer doubted whether I should go through with the retribution I envisioned. I only doubted how far to take it. The images of Lisa, entwined with Brandon, were seared in my mind, fueling the fire that kept me focused. Yet that night, sitting alone, I also felt a pang of sorrow. Our life together had been a lie for months. The woman I loved was gone in all but appearance, and in her place was someone I intended to bring to her knees. It was a strange feeling, mourning even as I meticulously plotted. The sound of the garage door opening alerted me. I quickly schooled my face into a neutral expression and went to the kitchen to appear as though I was cleaning up the remnants of our pizza dinner. Lisa stepped in through the garage entry door moments later, dressed elegantly in a maroon dress and heels. She looked beautiful, I couldn't help noticing, a cruel irony. Her eyes found me and she offered a tired smile. "Hey," she said softly. "How was your night with the kids?" "Oh, it was fine," I replied, turning to face her fully. I leaned casually against the counter to hide any tremor in my limbs. "We watched the latest superhero flick. You know Ethan, he loves that stuff." "Olivia is at Abby's for a sleepover, remember?" Right. She slipped off her heels with a small sigh. "The dinner went well." Long, though. She walked over and, to my surprise, wrapped her arms around my middle, leaning her head against my chest. Usually, after a work function, she'd be keyed up and chatty. This was a more vulnerable gesture. Perhaps the weight of her actions was finally manifesting as guilt? Or maybe she was just emotionally drained from juggling lies. I let her hug me, forcing my arms to loosely return the embrace. I hoped she couldn't feel the racing of my heart. Holding her at that moment was torturous. She smelled of her perfume with an undertone of wine and something else I couldn't quite place and didn't want to consider. I had to close my eyes to keep the flash of images of her in that hotel bed from overwhelming me. She murmured against my chest, "Thank you for being so understanding with my schedule, Mark. I know it's been a busy time." There was a slight quaver in her voice. Was that remorse? Did she feel a pang of conscience being in her husband's arms after leaving her lovers? If so, good, I thought darkly. Let it eat at her. I rubbed her back lightly, the way I might soothe a child, and said, "Of course. I'm glad it all went smoothly." After a moment, she pulled back and looked up at me. In her eyes, I saw swirling emotion. She looked on the verge of tears. This was new. Lisa rarely got teary, except at sad movies. I know I've been preoccupied lately," she said softly. "I'm sorry if I haven't been as present. Work and everything. It's just been a lot." Her lip trembled slightly. I realized she was grappling with guilt, perhaps trying in her own way to apologize without admitting to anything. I felt a stir of conflict. A tiny part of me almost wanted to comfort her, to let her confess and beg forgiveness, to break down in each other's arms and salvage something out of this wreck. For an instant, I saw the woman I'd loved for years, seemingly remorseful and hurting. But then, like a slideshow clicking to the next frame, I saw her kissing Brandon in that motel stairwell. The sympathy in me hardened over. I chose my words carefully. This was an opportunity to set the stage for the next part of my plan. I gently tucked a strand of her hair behind her ear, the tender gesture that made her eyes soften further. "Hey," I said in a conciliatory whisper, "we all get busy. I know you've got a lot on your plate. We'll have more time soon, I'm sure. Maybe we should plan a little getaway, just the two of us, when things calm down?" My suggestion surprised even myself. It just came out, but it fit the role I needed to play. A husband willing to forgive her perceived distance, trying to rekindle things. In truth, the thought of a romantic getaway with her made me inwardly recoil, but I managed to smile as if hopeful. Her eyes widened slightly. "You'd want to? I mean, that sounds wonderful. I'd love that." Her voice was thick with emotion now. Perhaps she was astonished by my continued kindness in the face of her internal guilt. She hugged me again fiercely. "I love you, Mark," she whispered, almost desperate. My throat closed up. How dare she? I swallowed the bitter taste her words left in my mouth and patted her back. "I love you too, Lisa," I said, the lies slipping from me with practiced ease now. In that moment, I realized phase 2 was about to begin, the emotional chess game. She suspected nothing of what evidence I had, and now her guilt made her potentially malleable. If I played the devoted, forgiving husband who was maybe just feeling a bit neglected, but still very much in love, I could manipulate the situation to my advantage. The stage was set to make her believe that if she chose our marriage and showed contrition, I might not discover her affair at all, or might be willing to move past whatever she thought I only vaguely sensed. The more secure she felt in my ignorance or possible forgiveness, the less on guard she would be. That night, as she fell asleep in my arms, something she initiated perhaps to ease her conscience, I stared at the ceiling with my heart thudding. I had all the proof I needed to destroy the facade of our life, but I wasn't going to deploy it just yet. There was one more thing I needed from her, a legal upper hand that she would never give me if she knew what I knew. I recalled a concept Whitaker had mentioned in passing, about cheating spouses sometimes signing unfavorable post-nuptial agreements out of guilt if reconciliation was attempted. Perhaps it was time to push that angle, to pretend to give her the chance to earn back trust and see if I could get her to sign away her claims under the guise of saving our marriage. Yes. If I could pull that off, it would be the crowning move of stage 2 before the final hammer fell. I gently extricated my arm from under Lisa once she was lightly snoring and went downstairs to my office unable to sleep anyway. There in the dark, I started drafting a letter to my lawyer on my laptop, outlining what I had gathered and asking him to prepare a postnuptial agreement with harsh terms for an adulterer, under the pretense of a reconciliation contract. My hands trembled slightly as I typed, not from sadness this time, but from the adrenaline of what I was about to attempt. It was risky, but if it worked, Lisa would sign her own financial ruin with a relieved smile. Thinking it was the first step toward my forgiveness, I shut the laptop and sat in silence for a moment. This was the turning point.
The evidence was gathered. The time for covert actions was nearly over.
The time for direct confrontation and deception, my deception of her, was now at hand. Upstairs, my wife slept soundly, perhaps dreaming that her life might just continue as before and that her husband truly loved her enough to suggest a romantic getaway. I felt a chill at how calm I was. The hurt was there, yes, but overshadowed by calculation. I almost didn't recognize the cold strategist I had become. But I knew him intimately now. He was the man who was going to see this through to the bitter end. Chapter 5. Confrontation and Deception. I spent the next few days preparing for the most critical phase of my plan, the confrontation. Timing and setting were key. I wanted it to happen when the kids were out of the house and when I had everything ready to push Lisa into the corner. So on the following Wednesday, I arranged for Ethan and Olivia to stay overnight at my parents' place. I spun it as a midweek Grandma and Grandpa spoil the kids treat, which the kids eagerly accepted. My parents loved extra time with their grandkids, and I hinted that Lisa and I could use a quiet night together. My mom, aware we'd both been stressed, thought it was a splendid idea. I felt a pang of guilt using my well-meaning parents in this charade, but it was necessary. Wednesday evening, after dropping the kids off with my folks, I returned home. Lisa had made a casserole and was just setting the table for 2 instead of our usual 4. Candlelight flickered. She'd lit a couple of the rarely used candles in the center. I raised an eyebrow at the quasi-romantic setup. "What's the occasion?" I asked lightly, shrugging off my jacket. She gave a slightly bashful smile. "No occasion. It's just been a while since we had a quiet dinner, just us. And since the kids are out..." She trailed off, perhaps uncertain if I would welcome the gesture. Inside, I noted the irony. She was attempting to be a good wife now, likely still trying to mend the distance she sensed. It almost softened my resolve. Almost. But I remembered every lie, every betrayal. I forced a warm smile. "It's nice, Lisa. Thank you." I stepped forward and gave her a quick kiss on the cheek. I had to play this lovingly a little longer. Dinner was pleasant on the surface. We chatted about the kids' school projects, about a new neighbor who had moved in down the street, about minor news around town, the small talk of long-married couples. But underlying it was tension from my end and anxiety from hers. I could see it in the way she refilled my water glass twice, fussing to keep busy, and the occasional falter in her smile when silence stretched. As we finished eating, I decided it was time to pivot the conversation. I set down my fork and cleared my throat. "Lisa, there's something important I think we should talk about." She immediately looked concerned, her eyes searching my face.
What is it?
I leaned back in my chair, feigning hesitation. "I've been feeling that something's off between us for a while now." Her face paled slightly. She opened her mouth as if to speak, but I held up a hand gently. "Please, let me get this out." I sighed, casting my gaze downward as if troubled. "We've been married 12 years. I know work has been busy for you lately, and maybe I've been preoccupied too. But I can't shake the feeling that there's a distance between us that wasn't there before. I want to figure out why and fix it, if possible."
Lisa swallowed. Her knuckles were white around the napkin she clenched in her lap.
"Mark, she started, her voice trembling. I continued, keeping my tone calm, but sad. "I love you, Lisa. You and the kids are my world. When I said maybe we should have a getaway, I meant it. I want to reconnect. But," I pause heavily, "I need to know if there's something you're not telling me, if you've been unhappy, or if your heart isn't in this anymore." I let that last line hang. At this, tears brimmed in her eyes. "No, it's not that!" she burst out. She reached across the table, grabbing my hand tightly. "Mark, I do love you. I never meant to grow apart. A tear spilled down her cheek. "I have been so sorry for how I've been acting. I know you've noticed I haven't been myself. It's not because I don't love you, I swear. I've been so confused and..." She choked up, unable to finish. This was it. The dam was about to break. I felt my pulse quicken. Part of me wanted to shout, "Confused, spare me!" But I held to the plan. I squeezed her hand, my expression pained. "Lisa, if there's something you've done, something you're afraid to tell me, I need you to be honest now. Whatever it is, maybe we can work through it, but we can't if you keep holding back." My voice was tight, as if bracing for a confession. She broke then. Shoulders shaking, she began to sob. I rose, moved around the table, and knelt beside her chair, as if to comfort her. In reality, I wanted to see her face clearly, to see the moment she admitted her betrayal. Her words came out halting and racked with guilt. "Mark, I made a horrible mistake." She covered her face with her hands. "I never meant to hurt you. It just happened, and I was too cowardly to stop it, or tell you." I gently pulled her hands down and held them. "You're talking about an affair?" I said it softly, as if unsure, my heart pounding. She nodded miserably, fresh tears streaking down. Yes, it was barely a whisper. Even expecting it, hearing her say it triggered a visceral stab of pain in me. I had to steel myself not to show fury. Instead, I closed my eyes, as if devastated but trying to remain calm. "Who?" I managed, voice raw. It was Brandon," she sobbed. "My boss." As if saying his name out loud broke something in her. She began rambling, the words tumbling out in frantic confession. "It started a few months ago. I swear I didn't plan it. We were working late one evening, and he kissed me, and I was weak and let it happen, and then it kept happening. I don't have any excuse except I was feeling so lost and maybe unappreciated, and he gave me attention, and I am so sorry, Mark. It was never about not loving you. I was just selfish and stupid, and..." She could hardly breathe through her crying. I stood slowly, taking a few steps away to ostensibly collect myself. Really, I needed distance not to break character. Hearing her pathetic justification, feeling unappreciated, stoked my anger. But I let her see only hurt. "How long?" I asked quietly. "How long has this been going on?" "About 6 months," she replied in a small voice. "It ended. I promise you it's over now. I ended it. In fact, I quit my job yesterday. I told him I couldn't continue living like this, lying to you. I couldn't face it or him anymore." This was news to me. I turned to look at her, genuinely surprised. Her eyes were red and earnest. "You quit?" I echoed. She nodded. "I was going to tell you I left the firm, make up some reason. But the real reason is I couldn't stand what I'd become." "I haven't seen him or spoken to him since Friday. I blocked his number. I want nothing to do with him. Her voice broke. "I just want my marriage back. I want you and the kids. I'll do anything to make this right, Mark. Anything." "I'm so sorry." She dissolved into sobs again. I was momentarily thrown off balance. She had preemptively quit, possibly out of guilt or fear. That she had already cut ties with Brandon, if true, was unexpected. Perhaps my act of kindness and suggestion of a getaway had pushed her into realizing she couldn't keep both worlds, and she chose me. It was almost pitiable. Almost. I allowed a heavy silence to stretch, broken only by her weeping. Finally, I spoke, keeping my voice as cold as I'd ever spoken to her, laced with controlled anger. "Do you have any idea what you've done? To me, to our family?" She looked up, stricken. I know I've broken everything. But I will fix it if you give me a chance. Please. Mark." She got up and approached me, reaching tentatively as if to touch me. I stepped back instinctively, and she withdrew, anguish on her face. I wanted to unleash my fury, to berate her with every vile name I could think of. But instead, I grabbed the folder I'd left on a side table containing the printed photos and evidence. This was the moment to show my hand. "You say it's over." that you want to fix it. My voice trembled with genuine emotion now. How can I believe a word you say, Lisa? You didn't just slip up once. You carried on, over and over. You slept with another man and then came home and kissed our children goodnight and lied to my face for half a year. My volume rose despite myself, years of hurt and betrayal coming through. She flinched as if struck, sobs renewing. I was wrong. I was so wrong. It makes me sick what I've done. If I could take it back. But you can't! I roared, slamming the folder down on the dining table. She jumped. I took a breath, steadying myself. In a low, dangerous tone, I said, "You say you'll do anything to earn my forgiveness. Prove it." From the folder, I pulled out a handful of the photos Porter had taken at the motel and hotel. I flung them onto the table. They scattered like dark confetti, images of her infidelity on display. Lisa's eyes widened in horror as she realized what they were. Her with Brandon, caught in the act. She reached with a shaking hand toward them. "What? How did—" "It doesn't matter how," I said, cutting her off. I lied. "I hired an investigator once I had suspicions. I've known for weeks, Lisa." She looked utterly devastated, seeing the proof that her secret was blown wide open. "Oh my God," she whimpered, covering her mouth. "Yeah, oh my God," I echoed bitterly. "I know every lie you told. The client dinners, the friend emergencies, the lunches. I know how you spent our money on him. Did you think I wouldn't find out about the watch you bought him with our card? Or the hotel bills? You were going to let me pay for my own betrayal?" I let that sink in and saw shame wash over her face anew. "I'm sorry," she croaked out again, tears flooding. "I was awful. You didn't deserve any of it. I have no defense." She looked at the damning photos, a haunted expression. "I can't believe I did those things. I'm so ashamed." For a long moment, I simply stared at her, letting silence and the weight of her actions crush down. Finally, in a voice cold as ice, I said, "If it were just me, I'd tell you to pack your things and get the hell out of this house tonight. But there are the kids to consider." She looked up quickly, terror in her eyes at the prospect of losing the children. "Please, Mark, not the kids. I would never keep them from you without reason," I said, truthfully at that moment. "You're their mother. But you sure as hell aren't going to be their role model in this. They don't know yet, and I hope to keep it that way as long as possible, for their sake. But eventually..." These things have a way of coming out. I saw her flinch as the reality dawned that others might learn of her disgrace. What can I do?" she asked in a broken whisper. "How can I fix this? I ended it. I left my job. I will never speak to him again. I swear on my life. I will be the best wife, the best mother I was before, and I will be again. I'll do counseling. I'll sign whatever you want. Just please don't leave me. Don't destroy our family!" She sank to her knees on the floor, hands clasped in supplication. It was a pathetic, astonishing sight. My once confident wife, brought so low. My heart was pounding, and I felt almost dizzy. This was exactly what I had set out to achieve, her utter capitulation. Yet the reality was strangely hollow. Perhaps because it was all so dirty and tragic, even if self-inflicted on her part. I took a long breath. Then I spoke with steely calm. "I will consider giving you a chance, Lisa, but only consider it. And if I do, it will be entirely on my terms. Do you understand?" She nodded rapidly. "Yes, anything." I fixed her with a stern gaze. "First, you're going to write a full account of your affair. Dates, times, all of it. This isn't for some perverse curiosity. This is to have in case I need to show proof. Or if you ever try to minimize what happened. It will be your own written confession." She looked fearful at that, but mumbled, "Okay, I will." "Second," I continued, "we are going to sign a post-nuptial agreement. In it, you'll agree that if I ever find out you so much as text another man inappropriately or break any fidelity again, you waive any claim to our house and the majority of our assets. Also, given what you've done, it's only fair you waive any claim to alimony in the event we do end up divorced over this." You will also agree to give me primary custody of the kids if we split, because I will not risk them being raised by someone with such poor judgment and morals without my greater influence. Do you understand? Tears were streaming down her face again, but she nodded. I could see these terms wounded her, but she likely felt she deserved it. If that's what it takes, I'll sign it, she whispered.
In truth, the draft Whitaker prepared had exactly those provisions. I'd email him by morning to finalize it now that she'd verbally agreed. Third, I said, voice hardening even more, you will get tested for STDs and show me the results. I will do the same. You put my health at risk with your recklessness. We're not sharing a bed until I see proof you're clean. She blanched and let out a shuddering sob, nodding in mortified agreement. Fourth, counseling, I added. We will attend marriage counseling, and you will also attend individual therapy to dig into why you did this and ensure you never even think about doing something like this again. Yes, of course, she said quickly. And last, you understand I cannot trust you at all right now, so you will have no privacy from me. You'll hand over your phone and devices for regular checks whenever I ask. No passwords hidden from me. Total transparency, Lisa, or this attempt is dead on arrival. She bowed her head, wiping her nose with the back of her hand. I'll do everything you said. I'll earn your trust back, no matter how long it takes. Her voice was low and filled with despair. It was clear from her defeated posture and compliance that she'd resign herself to any conditions I laid out. I stood there, feeling strangely numb. I had imagined feeling triumphant at this juncture, but instead I just felt tired and empty. Still, I wasn't done yet. You understand that if at any point I feel this isn't working, I'm gone, I said flatly. And you'll have no one to blame but yourself. She nodded rapidly. I know. I will spend the rest of my life making it up to you if you'll let me. I don't deserve it, but I'll try. I ran a hand over my face, as if in great turmoil.
We'll see, Lisa. We'll see. Right now, I can't be around you. That part wasn't acting. I truly couldn't stand to look at her another minute. She looked stricken but understanding. Do you want me to go somewhere?
I can stay at a hotel or... No, I said sharply. We will not create gossip or upset the kids with sudden separations. You're sleeping in the guest room for now, though. I need space. Of course, she whispered. Without another word, I left the dining area and headed for the front door. I needed air. I needed to not be under the same roof as her for a bit. Where are you going? She asked in a small voice, following a few paces. I grabbed my keys. Out. Don't wait up. And with that, I walked out into the cool night, leaving her standing there amidst the wreckage of our dinner and the damning evidence of her sins. I sat in my truck in a dark corner of a nearby empty parking lot for what felt like hours, just breathing, shaking, and processing what had happened. It had gone almost exactly as I scripted, yet the reality was messier than clean revenge fantasies. I'd reduced her to a sobbing wreck, and she agreed to every demand. From a strategic standpoint, I'd achieved a major victory. And yet, as I stared through the windshield at the starless sky, I felt not elation, but a heavy sadness alongside grim satisfaction. This was the path I'd chosen, to methodically destroy the life we had in order to punish her and secure mine and the kids' future. There was no turning back now. Eventually, I returned home past midnight. The house was dark. I peeked in the guest room. She was there, lying curled on the bed, eyes open and red from crying, staring at nothing. She didn't speak, and neither did I. I went to our bedroom, locked the door, and fell into a troubled sleep. The next day, I emailed Whitaker to finalize the postnuptial document. By Friday, we had it ready. I informed Lisa we had an appointment at a notary and made her sign the agreement, her hands shaking the entire time as she signed away her leverage in any future divorce. She didn't protest a single clause. In the days that followed, Elisa adhered to my every rule like a remorseful prisoner on probation. She handed me a written timeline of her affair. Reading through it was painful, even though I mostly knew the outlines, but I put it away as a tool if needed. She handed over her phone without me even asking, volunteering her passwords. There were tearful apologies every morning and night, which I met with curt nods or silence. Outwardly, to the kids and neighbors, we kept up a facade of normalcy. I insisted on that. Inside the house, we lived like distant roommates, aside from discussions about logistics and the children. She gave me space, as ordered. Anyone observing might have just thought we were going through a bit of a chill, perhaps a fight. Only Adam knew the truth among our circle, as far as I was aware. I had updated him that I confronted Lisa, and it was handled for now. He respected that I didn't share details, and he didn't press, but I could tell he was relieved on my behalf. With stage 2, the deception of reconciliation, executed and the post-nup in hand, I finally felt secure enough to move to the end game.
The legal pieces were set. My assets were as shielded as they could be, and Lisa was unlikely to contest anything now. But I still needed one thing: complete fallout. The part of me that had suffered quietly and acted graciously in public wanted the truth out. I wanted people to know what she'd done. I wanted her to feel the sting of social judgment, to be isolated in her shame. And I wanted Brandon, to face consequences too, beyond my wife quitting on him. So I began making some arrangements. A quiet phone call to Brandon's wife, Marianne, was the first step. We weren't well acquainted, but I felt she deserved to know. And I admit, I also knew the chaos it would unleash on Brandon's life if she found out. I had obtained her cell number through a mutual contact at a prior social function. The call was brief and brutal. I introduced myself, apologized for the nature of the call, then told her plainly that my wife and her husband had been having an affair for 6 months. I could practically hear the blood drain from her face through the phone. She stammered denial at first. How could I be sure? I calmly told her I had evidence and would email it to her. I said I was deeply sorry to shatter her world like this, but she needed to know. Her shocked, trembling voice thanking me for telling the truth and then dissolving into tears told me enough. Brandon's world was about to burn too. I sent Marianne a selection of the clearest photos and a copy of Lisa's written confession. It felt cruel but necessary, like cauterizing a wound. I didn't plan to follow up with her. That ball was now in her court, and I had little doubt she would confront Brandon and likely file for divorce immediately. Next, I confided in one more ally, Kelly, our neighbor. Adam's wife had been kept in the dark per my initial request, but now I gave Adam the go-ahead to tell her everything. I trusted Kelly to be discreet, but also to help orchestrate the next part, a gathering of close friends where the truth would come out. Once everyone had gathered in the backyard, I cleared my throat and announced that I had an important update. With Lisa present and trembling, I calmly told our friends and family that our marriage was ending because she had been unfaithful to me. A stunned silence fell. Lisa broke into tears and fled back inside the house, unable to face the crowd. The rest of those gathered stared in shock. A few offered quiet words of sympathy to me. Others went to check on Lisa or slipped away, reeling from the revelation. In one afternoon, the secret was laid bare for all to see. Within weeks, I formally filed for divorce, citing adultery. With the postnuptial agreement in place and Lisa's guilt overwhelming, the proceedings were swift and one-sided. She moved out to a small apartment across town, and I kept the house and primary custody of the kids. She waived alimony and agreed to my terms without protest. We managed to explain the split to the children as gently as possible. Olivia was confused and tearful, and Ethan, old enough to grasp more, was angry at his mother. I reassured them both that they were loved by each of us. Over time, they gravitated primarily to my home, though I encouraged them to maintain a relationship with their mom for their own well-being. News of Lisa's affair spread quickly in our community. Neighbors and friends were shocked. Many offered me sympathy and quietly distanced themselves from Lisa. It wasn't my overt intention to ruin her reputation, but I did nothing to hide the truth either. She faced the consequences socially, becoming largely isolated aside from a few loyal friends and family. As for Brandon, his marriage swiftly collapsed as well. He lost his family, and word of his misconduct cost him professional respect. In the end, he and Lisa gained nothing from their affair but disgrace. A few months later, on a cold winter evening, I sat in my living room with my children dozing on the couch beside me. The house was quiet and filled with only the steady, comforting presence of family. Our family, smaller now, but intact in the ways that counted.
I gazed at a photo on the mantel from years ago, the four of us smiling in happier times.
That chapter was closed and would eventually be packed away. My life was forever altered, but I had come through the fire intact. I had protected what mattered.
Through cold strategy and unwavering resolve, I made sure those who betrayed me faced the full weight of their choices. Lisa and her lover had lost nearly everything that truly mattered: trust, family, respect, brought low by their own actions.
I gently pulled a blanket over Ethan and Olivia and leaned back, exhaling slowly. The road ahead was still long for me and my kids, full of healing to be done. But I felt a grim sense of completion. The turmoil was over. Justice, in its own harsh way, had been served. I had delivered my vengeance methodically, and now we could begin to rebuild. In the calm of that evening, I found a measure of peace, knowing that in the end, we would be all right. The end. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, so subscribe to my channel and watch the next video.